In today's video, I'm going to share with you a fun book haul and what's on my reading list for the next little while, I guess. So grab yourself a nice hot drink, settle back, relax and enjoy. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you're well and safe and looking after yourselves, and it's so fun to be here and be filming. I just love it so much. I miss sitting down and filming, so when I get a chance to do it, I just really relish it. So I have a number of books that I'm still working through because they've been on my list for a long time, and then some other books will come in and sort of steal the limelight, and then I'm reading like 5 books at once and it can be a lot to keep up with. You all know the drill when it comes to reading, when it comes to learning. If you are witchy, a cultist, if you are that way inclined, if you're spiritual, this is something that means something to us, right? So it's really, really fun. It's really, really important. And it kind of consumes, and then you'll find other threads and you're like, oh, I want to go this way and I want to go that way, I want to learn this. And then I'm working with Lilith a lot at the moment, and it's like every other week she's assigning another book. I don't just mean that it's books I found online, it's literally that they come into my life and I know I'm supposed to read it, or there'll be direct downloads and like instructions about what I need to look into, and then I will stumble upon a book that is the exact title. So I know that there's work to be done in these areas. Yeah, I thought I would just share some books that have come into my life in the last few months during the summer, and then a little bit before, I'd say like spring and summer, that have come into my life that I have not started to read yet, but that are on my reading list, and I'm really excited to get into them. They're different, they're new, quite diverse and quite interesting, and I think that it's going to be quite fun to delve into these. I will also say I've got a number of other books that have also come into my life recently that I wanted to do specific reviews around, so I've not necessarily brought them into this because they have another sort of place, as it were. So that might make a little bit more sense when I dive into those, when I do reviews, or when I do book recommendations for certain topics. That will make a bit more sense. But for now, these are the books that kind of come in that I really felt I needed to share with you and talk about. Some of them you might not be interested in, and others you might be. So if you've got your nice hot drink, that's great. Settle back and enjoy. So it is the evening and I've been working hard all day, and my hubby just brought me a nice glass of red wine. I don't really know where to start. I know where to start. So there is no particular order. I'm just gonna go with the flow. And the first book I really want to show you is this book I picked up with my best friend when we went to a bookshop near her. We actually were looking for metaphysical shops because my best friend is doing some mediumship courses. She's been deepening into that. We grew up together and we've always been like sisters. She's a Leo sun as well, and we both have just this, there's nothing she could do that would scare me or surprise me. And the friend I've had the longest, we met when she was 5 and I was 6, so oldest friend. So we found this metaphysical shop that was very close to where she lived when I went up to visit her. She lives in Bedfordshire, which is where I grew up. So we met when my parents moved into a particular house. There was a cul-de-sac with this lovely green space, and we used to play on that. So she was just a few doors away. So her parents still live in that house on that road, but she obviously has a different house in a different part of Bedfordshire, but we drove past it, and so I saw my old house and it was just, oh, such nostalgia. That is, yeah, where I had like so many witchy experiences and stuff in that house, so it was just like, oh, going past it. I found this book, which I've never seen before, but obviously, you know, I'm studying astrology. Astrology is something that means a lot to me, that I'm not going to be offering astrology readings anytime soon. I'm not even offering tarot readings, and I've been studying tarot for such a long time, many, many years, and that is mostly because I just don't have the time or the energy or the spoons right now with having 2 kids, having a job, having a home life that is too fast for me to keep up with as it is, as well as a spiritual practice, and then just creating content, can't keep up with it. Also, I just really like taking my time with astrology. It seems to be an area where I'm like, I just want to grow into this, and I want this to be like a second nature kind of thing, and it's starting to become that for myself. Like when I'm doing the new and full moon forecasts for Patreon, it is becoming like that. Like looking at the chart and reading the chart is becoming so natural, and it's just really beautiful because I'm allowing myself to unfold in that way, you know, because I was studying astrology kind of casually for about 5-6 years. You then started to deepen into it for a couple of years, and then decided to take the course, and so my world has just opened up and got richer and richer and richer as I've explored more into traditional Hellenistic astrological techniques and such. This is more, as I understand it, based from a modern astrological lens. So it's sun signs, but it says discover your lover's secret sexual fantasies, and the book is The Astrology of Great Sex. Discover your lover's and your own deepest desires by Myrna Lamb. Now, I think this is fun. Me and my best friend had a lot of fun reading some of this together. I've read a few sections and I very much have enjoyed it. I don't agree with everything I've read in here, and that is after having some experience being my sun sign and having some years behind me knowing my husband, but also from my best friend, from her own experience as well. There is no way that this is all like fact, but it's fun. There's stuff in here that makes sense.
I will also add that whilst the book, I believe, is coming from that sun sign perspective, you can still look at your rising sign, for instance, or your moon sign. I'd suggest probably your rising sign is the second most powerful to look at. However, also you have to consider that these aren't going to be accurate anyway for every single person, because everyone has a completely different chart and different planets in different places. Just something to bear in mind.
First of all, you have these illustrations at the start with all of the signs of the zodiac. Then you have sexual compatibility through the zodiac, and you have the index at the front there. Then it says how to use this book. So to be fair, we didn't actually read that bit before we went into it. You go into Aries, and then the Aries woman, a memory, a fantasy. It breaks it up into different sections, different categories of the area of sex. Talks about what it's like to be attracted to an Aries, to date an Aries, memories, fantasies, jealousy, flirtation, turn-ons, public displays of affection, sexual attitudes and behaviours, even things that I can't talk about directly because they're related to the act. Also monogamy, times of day, attitudes, spiritual significances, different things that go on within the act, etc., as you can imagine. And then it goes into the Aries man. There isn't really any scope here for those who define themselves as non-binary or who feel that they are fluid. There isn't really that, so it is in that way quite prescriptive and quite specific in that way. So if that's something you're looking for, I'm afraid this isn't it. Although I think that there is a book that does explore the fluidity. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but if I can find it, I will link it below. I don't have it, but I believe that there is a book that does that. This isn't it. This is just a book I'd never heard of before, and I saw it in this shop and I thought it'd be fun, and it has been. So I haven't read it cover to cover. Like I said, I've dipped into a few areas of it and I've enjoyed it, and you know, I think this is going to be a bit of a party piece. You know, like I might pull out for my mates when they come over for a movie night or for like a dinner party. Just pull it out, you know, once we're having like cocktails or like wine and card games, I'll just pull it out for fun and let's just like have a play. But yeah, mostly just interesting really from that perspective. I also have Love Signs by Linda Goodman, that famous book. I'd say that that's better. I have read more of that. If you want this kind of thing but you're not so sure about the whole sex thing, if what I've said about it has put you off, maybe go for Love Signs. But again, Love Signs is about male, female, that duality, the binaries rather, and it was also again from a perspective of sun signs, so there's that. But it is a very, very popular, very famous book, but it's more about love generally rather than sex. So if you're looking for sex, this is fun, but again, not necessarily a recommendation if you know you're not looking for that. If you're looking for something like this, it might be fun. So anyone who knows me, who's been on my channel before, knows that I am somewhat of a kitchen witch, as well as all the other titles that I like to throw around. I hate labels, I really do, but folk witch, hedge witch, green witch, plant witch, and then also kitchen witch and hearth witch. Kitchen Witch, this is a book I didn't have and it was quite popular, by Sarah Robinson. This is food, folklore and fairy tale, and I thought this would be really, really fun to dive into because I have a huge collection of cookery books downstairs, but I also have quite a lot of hearthcraft and kitchen witchery books, but this was one I didn't have and it's one that's been recently released, and I thought it'd be really fun to dive into it. So this is published by Womancraft, which is a publishing house I really, really love. They have a lot of Lucy H. Pearce books, as well as obviously Sarah Robinson. Sarah Robinson also did Yoga for Witches, which many of you might have already read. I've not read that. So essentially this goes into a little bit of folklore around the kitchen. There are different deities or different figures. So Baba Yaga is talked about here, which could be really, really cool to dive into it. I've always been fascinated by the story of Basilia and Baba Yaga. Actually, having said that, I really want to read Madame Meter's book about Baba Yaga as well at some point. That's on my list, probably in a few years I'll get to it. There's stuff about fruits, different food items, different stories, and more about the folklore and more about different items of food, then food as medicine, herbs of course, spices, and then different ways that you can witch around the kitchen, and especially of course the Sabbats come into it. And I would say I've probably talked most about kitchen witchery in my Sabbat series because I usually have featured a recipe and I've shared some of the books that go into that, and a lot of the books on kitchen witchery that have recipes are very centered around the pagan wheel of the year. So different cakes, oh my gosh, simnel cake, oh. It has different rhymes as well. On the back it says, within this book you'll find no recipes, but something cooked up just for you. You'll find stories of magic, healing and hearth, of feasts and fasts and fairy tales, of poisoned apples, bewitching gingerbread and seeing the future in a teacup. I almost think they need to do like a second part to this. I think they might already be doing that, but they should do like a second part with the recipes, because I can imagine like I'm going to be reading this like drooling all over the book, wanting the recipes, but there are of course cookbooks and plenty of recipes online, so if you find something that inspires you in here, you can always like find out. But I'm excited to dive into this. I think this might be a fun one to read in autumn because of all of that yummy kind of spice and sugar and all of the crumbles and the pies. And, oh my gosh, I'm getting so excited thinking about autumn now. We're basically there really, and when you're watching this, you're probably already there. So I'm excited for this. Next up, a few months ago, I went on a boat with my hubby for the day. We kind of took a day off, both of us. The kids were at school and we just decided to go out on a boat in Cornwall. We went mackerel fishing. We didn't really catch anything. It was just to be out. It was in Beer in Devon, and I wanted to check out if there were any witchy shops, and really there were hardly any shops that were open, but there were some lovely gift shops and stuff, and I bought this beautiful lobster mug. So cute. Literally on the way back to the car, I found this amazing antique shop, and it had a whole cabinet of like old witchy occult books and tarot decks. Unfortunately, some of the tarot decks they had clearly knockoffs. Some of them looked legit, but I just focused on the books because they had a lot. And I came away with these three. So I actually posted about these on Instagram. It was a few months ago now. So the first one was Liz Green, Saturn, A New Look at an Old Devil. And I've wanted this book for a while. There is a new version of it now. This is $5.95 because this was first published in 1976. This was Samuel Wise's 10th printing in 1984. So this essentially just goes into Saturn, and because I have a bit of a thing for Saturn, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with Saturn because I have an issue with time. I always have, but also I actually find Saturn to be very, very helpful. And if you tap into Saturn and work with Saturn and you don't resist Saturn, you can actually get quite far with your work. And this is something that I've learned whilst diving deeper into astrology and planetary magic. So I was really, really keen to read this for a while, and when I saw this I just jumped at the chance of having an old book basically because I love old books, and look at the illustration on the front. So this is highly recommended. Saturn symbolizes a psychic process as well as a quality or kind of experience. He is not merely a representative of pain, restriction and discipline. He is also a symbol of the psychic process natural to all human beings by which an individual may utilize the experience of pain, restriction and discipline as a means for greater consciousness and fulfillment. I mean, isn't that just beautiful? So I'm so excited to read this. I'm just like, ugh. I just have so many books I want to read. There's just not enough time. The next two, I've never seen these books before. Working with Dreams, Self-Understanding, Problem Solving and Enrich Creativity Through Dream Appreciation by Montague Ullman, MD, and Nan Zimmerman. It's got an incredible illustration on the front there. These were Aquarian Press from 1987, to all who by sharing their dreams deepened our appreciation of dreams. So this is coming at it from like a psychological context, so it goes into different case studies and explores the dreams. So what do our dreams have to teach about us? Why do we create such strange images, and how do they relate to our waking life? In this classic guide to analysing and understanding your dreams, world-renowned psychiatrist Dr. Montague Ullman and researcher Nan Zimmerman help us unlock the mysteries of our nightly dramas. You'll learn how to remember and record your dreams, discover the meaning of dream imagery, solve problems using insight from your dreams, recognize creative, telepathic and warning dreams, create a dream group with family members and others interested in sharing their dream experiences. It lets you be your own dream analysis. So it's got a kind of more of a psychoanalytic vibe to it, but very, very interesting. I mean, I already keep a dream journal with lucid dreaming. It's very, very key. And then obviously astral travel, things that come back, I record those as well. So I think it's really interesting, and discover the meaning of dream imagery. It's going to go into the depths of what it means for you, obviously, rather than like having a dream dictionary where it's like, wrong, this means this. It's obviously going to be very subjective depending on what your experiences of that thing are that you're dreaming about. And so this is going to go into that, really support with that. So I really, really like the idea of this. I think this is going to be really supportive for deepening into that practice. On the other side of that, this is traveling between the worlds, conversations with contemporary shamans. That is a word that I haven't really explored on the channel. I've sort of chatted about a little bit because I don't like that term exactly. I can see where practices are shamanic in nature, and we don't really have another word to describe shamanism as such, but it's something that I steer clear of. I rather talk about ecstatic kind of trance-like experiences and the experiences I have in that way. You might describe them as being shamanic, but I don't refer to them as that. I would call them more of an ecstatic trance-like journey state, astral travel, etc. Or, you know, from a traditional witch perspective, spirit flight, essentially. But so this is a book that was printed by Hampton Roads in 2004, so there is probably going to be a lot of use of these words and a lot of whitewashing, a lot of white people in this book as well, so probably something you're going to want to take with a pinch of salt. Just flicking through, I just saw the name Gabrielle Roth, and that is someone who, yes, Gabrielle Roth, I've read her books. Gabrielle Roth is the founder of 5 Rhythms. I have her books over there. I actually have 2 copies of one of them. I started learning about Gabrielle Roth when I was at university and practicing some 5 Rhythms. It's like an ecstatic dance experience in that sense. So it's going into different practitioners' experiences, and it's got a whole list of them here. Sandra Ingerman, Gabrielle Roth, Larry Peters, Eric Gonzalez. Obviously, that is a very controversial term, and it's not something I would use myself, although I'm very interested in diving into this. It's a secondhand book, so I think that this will be really, really interesting just to get some perspectives and some different viewpoints. Also the front, again, I think that's really pretty. Obviously, I do practice astral travel and spirit flight, and those aspects of my practice are really, really important to me. There's something you can't really convey so easily in a video. You can't really talk about it all that easily either. A lot of it is gnosis and, yeah, very spiritual kind of personal connection as well. So you kind of have to just dive into it, but I'm keen to read about this here. 2 books that I picked up myself independently just on their own. This is Transportation, Learning to Navigate the Inner World by Diana L. Paxson. Diana Paxson wrote the book Taking Up the Runes, that's what it's called. I've not read that myself. I'm aware that it's very, very well received. I believe that Diana Paxson ran in some very famous circles when she was younger. As a child growing up, I believe she grew up with a number of magical people and had great experiences in those areas. I think there might be some controversial things as well, if I'm remembering correctly. I'm not sure. I don't know of anything specifically that's going to put me off reading this person's work. I mean, if I should, then let me know. I know obviously that they're into Northern tradition, so this is going deeper into that. I read a book, I can't remember the title of it now, a spirit flight book based quite heavily in Nordic tradition. I mentioned it, I think, on my Instagram because I received it as a Christmas present, but I've read it this year anyway. I will talk about it at the end of the year. But it was rooted very heavily in Nordic traditions, and I started to just sort of delve a bit deeper into those kinds of trance states and journey work, ecstatic states again, that encompass that tradition. And I made some interesting discoveries related to sex magic as well. Wanted to dive deeper into that, but also then just wanted to broaden my understanding around it. So this was highly recommended, so I decided to get it, and this is one that I think I'm probably going to read sooner rather than later, to be honest with you, because I'm like chomping at the bit to read this. It's got great reviews, so I'm excited. A book that I picked up from Glastonbury when I went recently is Dance, Love and Ecstasy, Modern Cult of Dionysus or Bacchus by John Cruz. I believe that John wrote some of the Fairy books as well. So this is obviously about Dionysus and Bacchus. I have had some personal encounters with Dionysus on the astral, visions and in dreams, and the encounters kind of keep happening as well. So there's this loop that keeps happening whereby I keep understanding more of the symbolism. Janus as well is part of it, but yeah, I don't know a lot about Janus either, but there is a book by Jake Stratton Kent I'm waiting to get my hands on because it's now out of print. It's Geosophia, and that explores the cult of Dionysus a little bit more. But I saw this, I've heard of John Cruise, but I'd never heard of this book. I saw this in Courtyard Books and I had to have it as soon as I saw Cult of Dionysus, I had to have it. So I'm really, really keen to get into this. There's a section on sex magic as well, which obviously if you've been on my channel, this is an area that is ongoing for me. Sex magic and glamour magic is a thing. I mean, obviously they're two separate things, but they again come together. Like such a lot of this comes together. But this is a personal study. You know, I can't say I'm at the point with Dionysus as I am with Morrigan. You know, I've been working with the Morrigan for 5.5 years, nearly 6 years. Or even Lilith, you know, I've been working with Lilith for nearly 2 years now, and that has kicked up so much in the last year, and the devotional, the work is intense. I'm also part of the Coven of Lilith that is being led by Elena, my boss and founder of the Holy Witch, and that was just a beautiful chance encounter because Elena and I were kind of diving into discovering Lilith at the same time. That just happened to be a really, really beautiful kind of merging thing that happened because I was receiving these downloads and hits and visions, and then discovered that Elena also was and had for a while and was being led in all of these different directions. And then fast forward 1.5 years and the coven is there, and there are actually 2 covens. The way it works is we're meeting separately, we have our own stuff, but so it's kicked up even more so in the last few weeks since we've been engaging in this work. But so it's nothing like that. This is just personal study, and you know, obviously there's been some gnosis there, there's been some communion there, there's obviously something going on, there's deeper things for me to dive into, but this is the start of my journey understanding that, really. You know, that whole linear thing, but actually we're more like spiral, cyclical thing. It's like that, like you go around and round and round. It's not even just a spiral, it's like this moving spiral where you're like this and then you come back round again and you're like, it's like a spiral of a spiral of a spiral, you know, labyrinth like. So with the work with Lilith, the first book is Embodying Lilith, a Gnostic Kabbalah of Lilith. I've been deepening my understanding around Kabbalah for a number of years as it is. Obviously, Kabbalah with the K is the Hebrew Kabbalah, the Gnostic and the spiritual kind of religious Jewish mysticism. I know Mark Williams created another book about Lilith first, but I couldn't get my hands on that. And I was actually ordering another book called The Fire of Lilith that I know I need to read next. It's on my reading list anyway, but I needed to get it through a particular bookshop because it wasn't available on Amazon or anything, and I got free delivery if I bought 2, so I decided to buy this as well because I knew I'd get to it. This is leading on from the first one. I think the first one's Embracing Lilith. Not read that one yet, but this one is the next one. This is Embodying Lilith, and there's a lot in here about that Gnostic Kabbalah and the spheres, and then sexuality and the soul and da 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 da. So the Tree of Life, the Tree of Good and Evil. There are also, I can see there are tarot cards in here as well, so it looks like there's a lot of correspondences, and it looks like there's a lot of meditations and practical work to embody Lilith. So I'm not sure how this is going to be. It says on the back, Embodying Lilith is a follow-up to the 2019 release of Embracing Lilith, delving into the Tree of Life, the Tree of Shadows, and the paths of both trees. Each sphere and path is associated with an aspect of Lilith, and several practices to gain experiential knowledge of Lilith and the Kabbalah. Embodying Lilith is not just an intellectual study of Lilith or Kabbalah, but an experiential journey to learn and grow in each person's path. So this is something that I feel is actually probably meant for me to read because of the work that I've been deepening into with the Kabbalah. Obviously not the K Kabbalah, but the Q Kabbalah and the Tree of Life, and then obviously how Lilith comes into that and her mythological story comes into that. I'm interested to see, but this is not the first thing on my list, either in this stuff or in the stuff that I've got to read for Lilith, but I'm gonna get there soon. Hopefully in the next year I'll get here. I'm excited for it nonetheless, and the illustrations again on the front, like, fire, right? I shared this book on Instagram because I found it was earlier in the year. I still haven't got around to it. This is The Secret Diary of Eve, and I think I understand a little bit more about why Lilith put this in my face, because this was in a bookshop local to me. I've never heard of this book before. When I saw this, I'd never heard of this author, Glinda Lee Hoffman. This is The Secret Diary of Eve, Women's Role in the Development of Consciousness. And I've read the back. I'm not so sure I'm going to be thrilled with this. It does go into the study of Kabbalah again. Glinda Linda Lee Hoffman is involved in extensive study of the Kabbalah for over 25 years, a leader of the field of Genesis mythology. And there is a particular thread of the narrative here that goes off. Secret Diary of Eve offers a new revelation in an old story. It is Eve who promotes the balance and wholeness through her ability to integrate feminine and masculine aspects of the human awareness. So this is about understanding Eve, not just the fall and the kind of wounds of Eve, but more about embracing Eve, I guess. But yeah, I think I understand a little bit more about why I need to read this, because I've been given some very specific downloads and instructions, which I'm not going to talk about here, but I believe that this is part and parcel of me doing this work with Lilith, for Lilith, because I very much see myself as an Eve. You know, I really do feel like I've had the male gaze on me all my life. The patriarchy has directed me in many ways, put me here, put me there, put me in that box, told me to do this, told me to shut up, told me to not be sexy, this, that, the other. You know, I'm not going to go into the ways in which I've been wounded by the patriarchy or whatever, or the ways in which I've contributed to the patriarchy, because I have, of course. But yeah, there it is, and I know this is really important work for me, so this is probably coming very soon. I want to read this very soon, especially because it was a few months ago when I picked it up and I knew it was important work then. I've still not got to it because I was reading other things. I've been reading a lot, just to give you a little bit of a heads up, I've been reading a lot around the folkloric devil and devil of traditional witchcraft. I've read a number of different tomes and quite excited to talk more about the witch's devil, because my experiences with that figure have been expanding, and also I think kind of aligning with my work with Lilith, as well as my explorations around Dionysus as well. So I'm quite excited to talk more about that, but I'm not there yet. But that's what I've been spending my time doing. So that's why I'm not here yet, but I can feel Lilith getting like, just focus, like focus on it. That's what she's saying. And then, like I said, I have a bit more of a clearer understanding now about why I need to read that book. After a certain revelation that leads me to believe that I have that understanding now about why I need to read that book and why this is work I've got to do around Eve and Eve wounds, I did a little search and I found this book. This has literally just arrived today. This was secondhand on Amazon, just a couple of pounds. This is The Song of Eve, an illustrated journey into the myths, symbols and rituals of the goddess, by Manuela Dunn Maschetti, PhD, Psychology and Women's Studies. So this is a lot about archetype, and there's some beautiful images. This is Hera. There is Kali in here, there's Aphrodite, there is Medea, there is Circe, different beautiful images. I mean, I think this is going to be a beautiful read. But essentially, the ways in which the archetype of Eve, I guess, is played through the thread of femininity, the incarnation of the feminine force of Kali. It's very powerful. I was surprised I didn't see anything about Lilith in here, because I feel like Eve and Lilith kind of go hand in hand, but there's a section, it sort of goes through the different archetypes of the goddess. So the virgin, the creator, the destroyer, the lover, the seductress, the mother, the priestess, the wise woman, the muse, and the inspirer. This is going to be, I think, very juicy to get into. I'm very excited. It says on the back, the Song of Eve is a song of all women. It's a chant sounding from centuries ago out of the mouths of the goddess, who gave women their strength and individuality. Lover, mother, priestess, creator, destroyer, virgin, muse. Here lie the most powerful female images in the rich tapestry of words and pictures for the women of today to discover and celebrate the goddess in herself. So this is going to be cool and important research, I feel, for myself. Circe and Medea, I've had a lot of fun learning about via the work of Cindy Brannan, who goes into depth talking about Circe and Medea in some of her books related to Hecate as well. So that's interesting if you are interested in Circe and Medea. And Medusa has been coming through a lot as well. There is Medusa in here, and that is like wild, because Lilith has been redirecting me back to Medusa. And Medusa is someone who's come into my life a number of times and not really stayed around. Mostly I think because the Moraga was kind of like for part of it when the Medusa came in. Medusa came in when I was younger as well, but throughout my teen years as well. But then I think that more recently, like when I was working with Morgan, Medusa came through, and I had a bit of a, I don't want to say fling because it sort of sounds like it's making it frivolous, but no, it was a sort of amusing for several months, you know, with Medusa. We danced. So we danced for a little bit, read some more about her story, looked at some art, had some downloads. I know what that was about, but now coming back into it, and I really feel that Lilith is pinpointing me towards stories where some of these Eve wounds have played a massive part in the ways in which certain figures were depicted historically by the patriarchy, through religion, and the ways in which these lies were told, but also how the stories changed and shifted. And I think that Lilith is pointing me back towards these areas. So from my experience so far, my personal gnosis is that Lilith is not one of these deities who's like, you can't work with anyone else, because she's literally pushing me to Eve. I mean, Eve is, it's not just pushing me to Eve. Eve is there. It's like Eve is inside Lilith as well as separate too, but it's like that work is essential. And Lilith is inside Eve as well. It's like one of those Russian dolls, you know? It's like Lilith is also then pinpointing other stories that I need to go and look more into, and I dare say Medea and Circe will come back up again. Medusa definitely really coming in strong at the moment, so this is going to be fun and interesting. Next up, I want to share a big stack of books. So heavy, look. Oh, I got these from World of Books for like a couple of pounds each, and then I got 3 for 2 on some smaller books that were like £3. So I got a really good deal. I think I spent like 20 quid and got all these books. So maybe less than 20 quid, you know. I think I spent like £15 and got this whole stack, and I'm so excited. Or, you know, tell a lie, this book I did not get from there. So maybe we should start with this. This is not a book I got from World of Books. This is a book I got from eBay. I've had this on my list for a really long time. This is Elsevia's Dictionary of Plant Lore by DC Watts. This was printed in 2007. Now, the reason why I'm going first with this is because there's a big story to this book. I don't know if you're interested in this, but okay. So many of you will probably have heard of Corine Boyer. I've talked about Corine Boyer. A few other people who you probably follow talk about Corine Boyer. I love Corine Boyer's books so much. Corine Boyer talks about folklore of plants and working with plant energies, and in a podcast that I listened to a few years ago, Corine Boyer talks about this book as being fundamental in her learning and her teaching herself, essentially. This book particularly. So I've had this book on my list for a really long time. I've had my alerts on eBay, and a couple of them came and went that were reasonably purchasable. And this one, it was about £15, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it right now because I don't want to miss this opportunity. And it arrives. It's in quite good nick, right? I open it up. It says, "To Kate and George, with love and best wishes, S. Watts." Didn't really read that, didn't think anything of it, just carried on. It says in here, Dictionary of Plant Lore by Donald Watts, Bath, United Kingdom, illustrations by Megan Watts. Again, not thinking much of this. In memory of Megan and Don, and then a letter falls out. A letter in here. The letter is to Kate, I'm assuming a friend of Sue. Sue Watts, as in Sue Watts' wife, sister? I believe sister of Donald. So this was written to a friend, Kate and George. It says, in memory of Megan and Don. June 16th, no date, but I'm guessing 2007. Dear Kate, I know there are mistakes and typos. Usually were published straight from the disc I sent them, leaving out the page proof stage when I was expecting to be able to correct all the things Sheila and I missed the first time round. They did not acknowledge my mother's watercolours. Megan Watts. I did not know that they were even going to use them until they sent me my copy allowance. I just wanted to fulfill my promise to Don that I would see that this book got published. We've just had a 20-minute hailstorm. Is this summer? Love, Sue. Kiss, kiss, kiss. Just got the tingles, and I almost like wept. I swear, I could weep right now. There's a preface here by Sue. It says, sadly, this book is published posthumously. It results from the author's interest in plant lore and tree lore and ethnobotanical studies developed over several decades of research and teaching. And my whole body just tingles all over. Like, I feel so humbled and blessed to have this copy. Like, how the hell did I end up with this? This was Sue's copy, I guess. I'm assuming sister because she says my mother, but she could have meant her mother-in-law, I guess. So Megan Watts, the mother, did these beautiful watercolours that are in the middle. They are stunning. Oh, it's glossy paper, so you can't see them so well. Clearly, this is a special copy of the book, and it's a special book in itself. In this podcast, I can't remember which podcast it was, that Corine Boyer was talking about this book as being like, well, the first or the most influential book in her learning about ethnobotany and plant lore. It was just very interesting because Corine Boyer reflects that there is a spiritual aspect to this book in that it sort of points you towards certain herbs. And really, I found this just so interesting that then this is my experience of this book, that this is the book that was sent from the publishers to Sue Watts, who was either the wife, most likely the sister, of Donald Watts. And this letter, I mean, it really quite a treasured piece for me now. I feel very honoured. I feel very much like this book was supposed to be with me in my collection. Like there's a reason that this is with me. I mean, I have no idea what that reason is really, but there's a reason to it, you know. Such a coincidence that I happened to hear a podcast by Corine Boyer, an author who I respect so much and whose work I absolutely treasure and adore, make it my mission to get this book. And it's almost a year and a half or so until I do. And when I do, it happens to be the edition that was sent to the person who got this published for Donald posthumously. It's just too much. So I'm like treasuring this book, really value this. So I'm really keen if anyone has any other information or knowledge or wisdom around the author or the way that this was published, please let me know, because it's really interesting to know. But I'd love to hear. Other than just being in complete awe of this whole experience and clearly what this book has to teach, I don't think I've got anything else to say. Obviously this is a book not to read cover to cover, although I suppose you could. That's not my plan with it. It's going to be somewhat of a go-to in terms of what I refer to when it comes to plant lore. Going back to the books that I mentioned before, which are all now higgledy-piggledy in my lap, the books that I got from World of Books when they had the sale, etc. I'll start with this one. This is the Encyclopaedia of Witches and Witchcraft by Rosemary Ellen Greeley, and this is a book that I've had for a long time on my list and never picked up, and then went out of print. I had a PDF of it at some point and I referred to it a few times, but basically this is just an encyclopedia of everything you need to know. So there's a fabulous portrait of Laurie Cabot there, whose work I love. There's just everything in here really, from deities to figures in history and different information about covens, different occult philosophies. There's the Knights Templar, Ishtar, Hermes Trismegistus, ghost hauntings, Gerald Gardner, the Elder, Elementals, Demeter, John Dee, Burning Times. So basically anything that you want to reference that you sort of hear of and you're not sure, I thought that this would just be a really good thing to have, and a really good basis for like research. Like if I'm like, oh, what's that? So Alrunes, never heard of that. Alrunes in German and Scandinavian myth. The Alrunes are sorceresses or female demons who can change shape, are believed to be the mothers of the Huns. As late as the 19th century, in some rural areas they were personified by small statues which were kept in the home, clothed and made offerings of food and drink, very hearth witchery. Believed that the Alrunes could divine the future by responding to questions of motions of the head. If the statues were not properly cared for, they were said to cry out, which would bring great misfortune onto the household. So there you go. So lots of things in there to know and to learn about. Intriguing. So as I said, all of these books that I'm about to show you in that book were just a couple of pounds from World of Books. This is Betwixt and Between. I've wanted to read this for years. This is Storm Fairy Wolf, whose work I haven't actually read, who I've listened to talking on podcasts, and I've followed their work and been interested in it, but I've never been called to purchase a book. But this one was on my list, and then I saw it at World of Books secondhand and thought I should definitely pick this up and delve into its wisdom. I'm excited because I am interested in the fairy tradition of witchcraft, and this is exploring the fairy tradition. Fairy, as in F-A-E-R-Y, but obviously hailing and originating with the Feri, as in the Anderson Fairy traditions, F-E-R-I. So it's known as a tradition of great power and beauty, originating the west coast of the United States, separately from the Wiccan traditions in England. The Fairy appeal is rooted in its focus on power and results, tools to begin your own fairy-style magical practice. So it's not necessarily fairies as in the fae, it's different. There's some really intriguing things in here, and I wanted to explore this tradition a little bit more because of things that I'm understanding. There's the Iron Pentacle in here. I've heard a lot about this in other books, and it's something I've been interested to, oh look, FreyasCauldron.com. This is fairly certain this is a British thing. Secondhand books, the things you can find in them. So yeah, I'm so intrigued to delve into this. I'm sure lots of you have read this, so if you have, let me know. A book that is fairly recent, but you know, a few years ago now, I believe, from Llewellyn. 2019, I believe, was the second printing. Yeah, 2017 was the first printing. So yeah, not that long ago. Not that long ago. I'm excited. Next up, I have been fascinated by Michael Howard and Nigel for a long time, and I kind of see them as intertwining on their topics somewhat, although if you ask me which book is by which person, I probably couldn't tell you unless I remembered it, because I feel like their work kind of eludes me somewhat. But I'm very interested in anything that either of them write, but I kind of see them as sort of similar because they write about some similar things. But so I have a book here which is Finding Your Guardian Angel, very slim book by Michael Howard. So this is Contacting Your Guardian Angel, and this is via the works of the angelic hierarchy. I was curious to dive into this. This is finding your guardian angel through incense and candle burning. Since very early times, candles have been a source of light and comfort. Incense and candle burning is a simple magical art that's been practiced for thousands of years in nearly all of the world's major religions. This comprehensive guide gives practical guidelines on working candles and incense and provides rituals for healing, psychic protection, and contacting guardian angels and divination. With additional information on the use of candles in the magical circle, the angelic hierarchy, zodiacal colours, and astrological dates, Michael Howard shows how candles and incense can produce magical results. Quite small print. 1991, and I thought it might just be like a nice delving into a topic that I'm interested in kind of peripherally before exploring further. So that is that one. This is Natural Magic by Nigel. Obviously different from the Natural Magic with a K by Giambattista Della Porta. That is a book that I really wanted to get when it recently came out, like on beautiful hardback and everything. It's just stunning. That is on my wish list. But yeah, that is something that I do mean to read. Oh my gosh, this is signed. Look, this has been signed by Nigel. How cool is that? There's a picture of him here. This is Lear Books. So in this it goes into Mother Earth, magical animals and birds, power within, being human, the human body, divination, the runes, Ogham, divining rods, magical food and drinks. Oh, there's a recipe here for soul cakes. Very fond memories of making soul cakes. Natural magic is a way to work in harmony with natural energies and forces that surround us. Again, it's a really thin book, by the way. Practicing natural magic involves simple but effective practical techniques that all can use to become closer to the natural order of which we're all part. In this comprehensive introduction to natural magic, Nigel, author of 44 books on European traditional spirituality and folklore, provides an accessible, in-depth approach to this most basic form of magic. The contexts include an explanation of earth, mineral and plant magic, magic of landscape and place. There's actually a typo on the back. Magical animals and how we can work with them, the power within the human body, natural magic charms, talismans and amulets, food and drink, and how to make and empower them. So I think this is going to be quite a nice introduction into the work of Nigel. Again, it was just a couple of pounds, so I thought, why not? These two books were books that I was like, yeah, I have to get these, because this one especially, it's out of print, and when I looked for it, it was upwards of 100, and again, I got it for just a few pounds. And this one, when I did my research, it had a whole section on the Netherlands and the Enchanted Worlds. I essentially have some Dutch heritage. That Dutch heritage comes from South Africa, so my ancestry was involved in that whole colonization and the Boer War and all of that unpleasant stuff that I have to decolonize and deconstruct within my own awareness. But I am very interested in folk practices of the Dutch. So when I saw that this was in here in terms of European folklore and ritual around the witch hunts, etc., anthropology, history and folklore and psychology and gender studies, etc. So this is from the Low Countries de France in the Netherlands and the Enchanted World. I thought that this would be very, very interesting for me beginning my search, deeper sort of areas of this. I know I talked about the Pennsylvania Dutch, and obviously that is an area that I can look into to discover more about my Dutch ancestry, but again, that has somewhat been diluted because it is separate as well at the same time, because obviously I'm not Pennsylvania Dutch and I'm not even from that area of the world, so it would be almost just learning what of those practices come from the original Dutch. And so this is part of my sort of ongoing personal search into my own heritage and my own ancestry. I thought this would be really, really interesting for that. This is the Atholonia Press. This is the Atholonia History of Witchcraft and Magic in Europe. It's volume 5, so there are quite a few volumes. This is the 18th and 19th centuries. A number of authors here. So this is history and the occult, essentially. So this is going to be a bit more of a hefty read, but I've not read the full tome, so I will dip in and out of different areas, I think, before I read the whole thing. This section particularly is after the witch trials and then what is remaining. interesting for me, you might be interested for your own reasons. And obviously there are other volumes I've not really looked into, volumes from different centuries, so you may wish to look into other areas. This was available at the time of purchase on World of Books for a couple of pounds. It's been really helpful for me. And then this one, like I said, this is going for a lot at the moment. This is Witchcraft, a history, with the most fantastic illustration on the front. And it is PG Maxwell Stewart. And I know I've seen this book before, but I've never thought to get it. I read the description, then I searched for it, and I realised how rare it was and how difficult it is to get a copy. I jumped at the chance. There's witches in Greece and Rome, Enter the Christian Witch, A Plague of Witches, Trying a Witch, Neither Gone Nor Forgotten, and The Modern Witch. Running the gamut. There's an image of an owl there. So I really have no idea what to expect. So if anyone's read this, please let me know. It seems like it's got a lot to do with the witch trials and the history of how the witch is seen. So again, we're in that sort of territory. Temple Publishing, and first published in 2000, so it's quite a modern piece of work. Oh, that's a jolly photo. That is PG Maxwell Stewart, an honorary lecturer in history at the University of St Andrews. My friend studied there. His other books include The Occult in Early Modern Europe and The Chronicle of the Popes. He is currently writing a new history of Scottish witchcraft. Wow! I can imagine that might be available now because this was obviously published in the early thousands. There you go. So that is the books I've got to show you. As I mentioned, there are some other books that are newer in my collection, but I'm keeping those a little bit under wraps at the moment because there's some other stuff going on with those that I want to just get a little bit clearer on. There's obviously some other stuff here I want to get clearer on. There's a lot of other stuff that I want to get clearer on with the books I'm currently reading. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes and will continue to go on, and probably a lot that I'm not going to share. At least not now, if at all. There will be some stuff that I'll be sharing some point down the line, but for now, under wraps. I just thought this would be so fun to share, and I think of all of the books, this has got to be the treasure of all of them. Even with Nigel Pennick's signature here, I think I just have to just revel in this. The first books in line for study are these two, Transportation and Secret Diary of Eve, Saturn, and obviously this, Dictionary, and then the others are coming, happening. I like that the bigger tomes, you don't necessarily have to read the whole thing to get what you want out of them in the particular moment when you're searching for them, so I quite like that. They can be kind of ongoing things, but the ones you kind of need to read cover to cover, I will slowly drip through them. So I really, really hope this has been enjoyable, if not informative. If you've got anything from it at all, please like the video, share it with anyone who you think would find it interesting. If you found the story about the Dictionary of Plant Folklore and Corine Boyer's recommendation and then the way it came to me, etc., could you give me a little plant emoji down below if you get to the end of this? If you enjoyed it, as I said, click the thumbs up button, share it with anyone who you think will find value in it too, subscribe, hit the bell notification, and if you would like to support me further, I have an Instagram channel where I'm sharing more frequently than this. There's TikTok, of course, but I'm not really on there at the moment, so that's sort of up to you. There are ways to support me down below. There's the super thanks button, there is a buy me a coffee page and a direct PayPal link, so thank you to everyone who supports me there. There is also Patreon, which I'm working quite hard on at the moment. There is the first tier, which is a support tier, which gets occasional downloads, PDFs of tarot spreads and Book of Shadows pages that I create, and I also do summaries of the new and full moon forecasts that I do that are for my second tier, but I do summaries for the first tier. And the second tier is my main tier really that I focus on now, which is everything else that the support tier get, plus the new and full moon forecasts, which include quite a lot of depth about what is going on, the themes and the energies, the different aspects, how you can work with them, so how you can sort of mitigate any challenging aspects as well as work with and lean into any really positive aspects, what you can do to amplify that energy and lean into it and work with it. So planetary magic, etc. There's a lot of shadow work and journal prompts there and shadow work prompts that you can work through, and you can work through it all like in the week leading up, the week after, and you can also take these journal prompts further as well. Then there's also practices, rituals and spell work and planetary magic that you can tap into as well for the lunation, as well as herbs and crystals that you can work with that will be beneficial for you, and a custom made tarot spread for that lunation as well with a PDF. They're about 25 pages, so what I've been doing is not only just putting them on Patreon, but I've also been making PDFs, making them available for download, PDFs of the tarot spread as well as the whole forecast and workbook in one, so you can print them out and take them with you, and you can continue to work with them because the work is ongoing. It's just we have these themes that come in and out, and it's really, really cool to see how we move in and out of these themes, and these things are sort of shifting and you can see it happening around you. It's just really beautiful. So if you want to get deeper in with your work with the moon, or to learn more about the planetary movements and how you can work with them during the lunations, I highly recommend. And thank you to anyone who supports me over there. I hope that you're enjoying it. If you have any questions, comments, if you'd like to comment on any of these books, if you've read them already or are excited to read them, please let me know. If you have any thoughts or suggestions for video ideas, things you'd like to see, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. So with all that said, thank you again so much for joining me. I hope that you stay well and safe and look after yourselves and have the most beautiful day possible wherever you are. Make the most of it, and I'm sending you so much love and many blessings, and I will see you again in another video really soon. Take care. Mwah. Bye.